Hi, I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I am really excited today to talk about my favorite mechanisms in the newest Stonemaier game, a new World of Wingspan game, Finspan. This is designed by David Gordon and Michael O'Connell. It's developed by Elizabeth Hargrave, the designer of Wingspan, and it has some similarities to Wingspan. It also has some key differences, and I'll talk about some of them today in today's video. So normally I have one favorite mechanism. I have four that I want to highlight here about Wingspan. About Finspan. One of them is that the resources, the main resources that you are spending to play cards in this game are other cards. You have a hand of cards, and the cost on many of these cards is simply to discard cards to a personal discard pile. And there are two things about this that I really like. It means that there's no randomness of resources. You have full control over the resources that you have. You have cards in hand, you can spend those cards to play more cards. Not all cards have that. This card, for example, has some other things that you can spend, but typically you're spending cards. However, we found in playtesting that there's a sense of loss aversion that can lead to analysis paralysis. That is, it can take a long time to take your turn if you're deciding, okay, I know I want to play this card, but which cards do I want to get rid of if you can't get those cards back? So we implemented the concept of a personal discard pile. So instead of discarding to a shared discard pile for the whole table, when you discard, so if I want to play this yellow boxfish, and I decide these are the two cards that I'm going to discard, I discard them to my own personal discard pile. And there are ways to get those cards back later in the game based on certain benefits and abilities that I can gain. So I really like this concept of spending cards to play cards, which isn't new to Finspan. There's other games that do that, but also that you are spending them into your own personal discard pile that you have full control over and that you can get some of those cards back later in the game. That's my first favorite mechanism. The next favorite mechanism is that as you are building a tableau of cards, of these fish cards on your ocean map, which I'll show you in a second, you are also gaining tokens that you put on that mat. You're gaining eggs, and you can flip those eggs around to turn them into young. So you can hatch an egg into a young. And when 3 young end up on the same space, so there's actions that have you have young swim around and end up on the same space. When you have 3 of them on the same space, they turn into a school. The schools are worth more points than these tokens at the end of the game. So I really like this concept of tokens evolving into other tokens and a real reason to move these tokens around. Some of them, certain cards want tokens on them. Just in general, you want to turn the young into school so that you have this reason to move the young around. I really, really like that. That's number 2. Number 3 is the way the ocean mats work. There's a couple different benefits here to the ocean mats that I really, really like. One is that you're diving down, and on your turn, you are diving all the way down. So even if you have empty spaces, you are still moving past them because it's water. There's nothing really impeding you from diving deeper and deeper other than water pressure as you go deeper and deeper into the ocean. So you're diving down, encountering fish along the way. There are even some fish that are pre-printed on your player mat here. And there's a couple different things going on in the mat, but the one that I wanted to highlight here in particular is at the bottom of the mat, there are 3 different bonuses that you gain if it's the first time in that round, playing Finspan over 4 rounds, if it's the first time in that round that you dove down that dive site. So the first time that I dive down this dive site is generally geared towards drawing cards, but the fish that you have here might change that. The first time that you dive down, I put my little meeple, my little diver meeple on top of this box. And this is actually the icon for how I draw cards out of my discard pile. So I can draw a card from my discard pile. And then I put the diver meeple on top of this to show that I've used this dive site this round. Now I can continue to dive down here with other divers, but I just don't get that bonus. Because there's a bonus at the bottom of each of the other dive sites, though, it's an incentive for me to continue to dive through the other dive sites. It encourages diversity of diving rather than just having one really powerful dive site and using that over and over and over again. It's a reason every round to dive at least once in each of the dive sites to get that little bonus. Doesn't always happen, but it's a nice little nudge to players to do that. I really like that. There's also one other little bonus on the dive sites where built into the player mat, this icon says, if there's at least 1 fish card in this dive site in this zone, so the zone directly below it, this is the sunlight zone, the twilight, and the midnight zone. If there's at least 1 fish in this area, I get to draw a card as I'm starting to dive down there. And there's one of these at the top of each of the zones of this dive site. I really like that as well. There's a reason to spread your fish out and have them in different areas, different zones of your player mat and different dive sites. A lot of reasons the game encourages you to have a diverse ocean rather than just like one really powerful dive site. Last, there are lots of cards, including all three that I happen to have right here, that have all players' benefits. So over here on this one says if you activate this ability, and really you can't, this is an option for all players. So as you dive down and you activate this ability, all players, even if you don't do it, have the option of moving a young or a school in a line on your mat. This one says all players get to hatch a young from one of their eggs, and then they can move that young or any school in a long line. So that goes back to the movement idea that I mentioned earlier. And what's the last one that I have here? Here's another hatch one. So this one says that all players get to hatch an egg into a young. I really, really love the positive player interaction present in Finspan. The game moves along at a really brisk pace. It plays faster than Wingspan, faster than Wormspan for sure. But there's a great reason, there's a great amount of player interaction through these benefits that help all other players as you are diving down. Benefits you too. You are among those all players. But I really like that there's a lot of feel-good group table benefits in Finspan due to these types of abilities. So yeah, there are more things that are unique from Finspan to Wingspan. And if you're not even familiar with Wingspan, I'm sorry I haven't gone into the core elements of this game, but these are some of the things that differentiate this tableau building game with this fish theme with a bunch of new abilities from Wingspan, my 4 favorite mechanisms here. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to answer them in the comments below. Yeah, and there's more information about Finspan on our website as well. Thanks.